You think this is about God. You think this is about land. That's the story they need you to believe, the one they beam into your living room in high definition, saturated with the colors of grief and rage. They show you the rockets arcing through the night sky, the rubble of family homes, the weeping mothers. They call it a tragedy, an ancient, intractable conflict between peoples. I call it a product launch. Let's be clear. The chaos you are witnessing in the Middle East is not a failure of diplomacy. It is the triumphant success of a business plan. The mainstream narrative is its marketing campaign. From the BBC to CNN to Fox News, they are not reporting on a war, they are selling it. They present you with a simple, emotionally charged drama: the terrorist attack, the righteous retaliation, the looming threat of a wider war. They want you polarized. They need you to pick a side, to wave a flag, to pour your righteous anger into a social media post. Because while you are busy arguing over who is good and who is evil, you are not asking the only question that matters: cui bono? Who benefits? To understand the answer, you must turn off the television. The real story isn't in the desperate scrum of reporters in Tel Aviv or the smoke-filled skies of Gaza. The real story is on a different screen, the one that glows on the trading floors of Wall Street. On October 7, 2023, while the world reeled in shock, a different kind of signal was sent. It was a buy signal. In the days that followed, as the first Israeli bombs began to fall on Gaza, the stock price of Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor, jumped 8.9%. Northrop Grumman, another merchant of death, saw its shares soar by 11.4%. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the sound of a cash register ringing. Every explosion you saw on your screen had a corresponding, calculated uptick on a stock chart. The blood wasn't a tragedy, it was liquidity. You are told this is a war between Jew and Arab, between Israel and Palestine. A lie. This is a war between the customers of the same weapons dealer. Since the Second World War, the United States has provided over $158 billion in military aid to Israel. Where do you think that money goes? It doesn't dissolve into the ether. It flows directly into the coffers of American corporations, the very ones whose stocks flourish in the fertile ground of conflict. They are the producers of this gruesome theater. They are the architects of the inferno. We call them the military-industrial complex. For them, peace is a bear market. Stability is a threat to their quarterly earnings. Their business model is not defense. Their business model is perpetual, managed conflict. They supply the Iron Dome to intercept rockets, and they lobby to supply weapons to the very nations that might one day fire them. It is a perfect, self-sustaining ecosystem of destruction. They don't care who wins or who loses the battle on the ground. As long as the weapons are being used, as long as stockpiles are being depleted and need to be replenished with newer, more expensive models, they have already won. And the people? The men, women, and children caught in the crossfire? In the cold calculus of this enterprise, they are not casualties of war. They are an operational cost. They are a necessary expense on the balance sheet, the human price required to justify the next multi-billion-dollar arms deal, the next generation fighter jet, the next wave of defensive aid. Their suffering is the fuel. Your emotional reaction to their suffering is the free marketing that keeps the machine oiled. Look at the language they use. The right to self-defense. It sounds noble, doesn't it? But peel back the veneer of rhetoric, and you find it is the most successful piece of marketing copy ever written for the consumption of munitions. It's a blank check for destruction. This is why they work so hard to control the story. They have turned a grotesque business transaction into a global football match. They hand you a jersey, paint your face, and demand you scream for your team. They need you to believe in the simplified narrative, in the binary choice between two opposing flags, because a distracted public never examines the books. A public consumed by moral outrage never follows the money. So, the next time you see the breaking news banner flash across your screen, the next time you feel that surge of anger or pity, stop. Take a breath. And look away from the stage. Look towards the director's box, where the shareholders of Raytheon are counting their dividends. Understand that your energy, the very moral fiber they are trying to activate, is the lubricant for their war machine. Don't choose a side in their play. Instead, start asking who wrote the script. Because if the military-industrial complex are the ones selling the weapons, who's financing them? Who is powerful enough to turn an entire region of the world into their private, guaranteed marketplace? In the next chapter, we will pull back the curtain on the producers and stare into the face of the casino owners, the global financial elite who rig the game so they can never, ever lose. If the military-industrial complex are the ones selling shovels in a gold rush, who is it that manufactures the fever? Who owns the mine? You think these corporations, as powerful as they are, fund themselves? You think a company like Raytheon simply decides to build a missile and the world magically aligns to buy it? That is a kindergarten understanding of power. To find the real puppet masters, you must look away from the engineers and the generals and turn your gaze to the quiet, air-conditioned offices where the real architects of global policy reside. They have no uniforms, they fire no shots, and their names are rarely in the headlines. But their fingerprints are on every weapon, every loan, and every news report. We are speaking of the global financial elite, and their names are BlackRock and Vanguard. These are not simply investment firms, that is the story they tell you. In reality, they are a financial singularity, a black hole of ownership that has quietly swallowed the global economy. Don't take my word for it, look it up. Who are the top shareholders of Lockheed Martin, the company whose stock soared as Gaza burned? BlackRock and Vanguard. Who are the top shareholders of Northrop Grumman? BlackRock and Vanguard. Raytheon, Boeing, the same. They own a commanding stake, a virtual monopoly, on the very machinery of modern warfare. They are not just betting on the war, they own the armory itself. But their game is infinitely more sophisticated than simply profiting from arms sales. That is merely the first act of their play. Selling the weapons is only half of the transaction. You see, modern wars are not paid for with cash, they are paid for with debt. And who arranges these colossal, nation-crushing loans? Look at the largest shareholders of the big banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America. You will find the same two names, BlackRock and Vanguard. This is the perfection of their business model. It is a closed loop, a self-sustaining ecosystem of profit derived from human misery. Step 1. Use their ownership in defense companies to ensure the perpetual production and sale of weapons, fueling conflict. Step 2. Use their ownership in the major banks to loan the money to the governments who buy those weapons, creating inescapable debt. And then comes the final, most cynical act, the reconstruction. After the bombs they profited from have leveled cities, after the smoke clears and the world's media broadcasts images of the devastation, a new narrative cry arises: humanitarian aid and reconstruction. The cost to rebuild a place like Gaza is estimated to be as high as $50 billion. Where does that money come from? More loans, brokered by the World Bank and the IMF, institutions heavily influenced by the same financial powers. And which companies do you think receive these multi-billion-dollar contracts to rebuild the infrastructure? The very construction, engineering, and logistics corporations in which, you guessed it, BlackRock and Vanguard are also major shareholders. This is the genius of their strategy. They profit from the destruction, they profit from the debt incurred to cause the destruction, and they profit from the debt incurred to fix the destruction. It is a triple-dipping scheme on a geopolitical scale. The tragedy of one nation becomes another's diversified investment portfolio. But how do they secure public consent for this grotesque cycle? How do they justify wars that serve no one but themselves? This is where the third player in this unholy trinity enters the stage, the think tanks and supranational organizations. When you see a retired general or a distinguished-looking Middle East expert on CNN or the BBC, do you ever ask who pays their salary? You are told they come from independent institutions, like the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, or the Atlantic Council. Independent? A cursory look at the donor lists of these organizations reveals who truly pulls their strings. Their major contributors are the titans of finance and defense: Goldman Sachs, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and, of course, BlackRock itself. These are not centers of intellectual inquiry, they are the marketing and PR wing of the war machine. Their job is not to analyze reality, it is to manufacture a reality that serves the interests of their donors. They produce the white papers, the policy recommendations, and the expert witnesses that give politicians the intellectual cover they need to sign the checks and authorize the strikes. They are the architects of the narrative. They formulate the talking points: weapons of mass destruction, the right to self-defense, promoting democracy, that are then fed through the media corporations which, as we've established, are owned by the very same financial entities. It is a perfect supply chain. The think tanks create the demand. The politicians, bought and paid for, place the order. The military contractors deliver the product. And the global financiers, the house that owns all the players, collect the cash from everyone involved. They have built a global casino where every spin of the roulette wheel lands on their number. So when you are encouraged to argue about flags and ancient hatreds, you are participating in a carefully crafted distraction. They want you consumed with the drama on the stage, so you never look up at the rigging, at the hands pulling the strings. They are not just controlling a battlefield, they are controlling the entire ecosystem of information, finance, and policy that makes the battle possible in the first place. You think the ultimate prize is money? You think this vast, intricate web of control was built merely to enrich a few shareholders? That is still thinking too small. Money is the tool, not the goal. The real prize is far greater, and it has to do with a fundamental re-engineering of society itself. The chaos they create is not an end, but a means to an end. It is the shock doctrine in action, intended to make the public so fearful and disoriented that they will accept a solution they would never have considered in times of peace. In the final chapter, we will connect these dots and unveil their ultimate endgame, a global reset orchestrated in the shadow of war and crisis. You have been told the endgame is profit, that the endless cycle of destruction and reconstruction is merely about enriching a handful of corporations and their unseen shareholders. That is a comforting, almost simplistic lie. It keeps your focus on the balance sheets, on the flow of money. But money, as we have established, is merely the tool. It is the fuel for the engine, not the destination. The real prize, the ultimate objective of this vast and intricate machine, is not the reconstruction of Gaza, it is the reconstruction of society itself. To understand their final move, you must grasp the brutal elegance of the shock doctrine. A population in a state of comfort and stability will never willingly surrender its freedom, but a population under duress, frightened, impoverished, disoriented, will beg for a savior. It will accept solutions it would have vehemently rejected just months before. Chaos is not a byproduct of their operations, it is the manufactured environment required for the next phase of control. And what is the most reliable way to send the global economy into a tailspin, to create the necessary shockwave of fear and scarcity across the entire planet? You do not need to drop a bomb on New York or London, you simply need to light a match in the tinderbox of the Middle East. Let us be clear, the war is the trigger. The true weapon of mass destruction is economic. Every time tensions flare in the Strait of Hormuz, the lifeblood of the global economy, crude oil, begins to tremble. The analysts on the news will tell you, with feigned gravity, that a war with Iran could push oil prices past $200 a barrel. They call this a risk. It is not a risk, it is a calculated objective. Such a price spike would not just mean more pain at the pump for you. It would trigger a hyperinflationary spiral on a scale not seen in our lifetime, crippling supply chains, shuttering businesses, and vaporizing the savings of millions. This is the engineered problem. Then comes the public reaction, as predictable as the sunrise. Panic, fear, outrage. Citizens demand their governments do something about the crushing cost of living. The media, owned by the same interests profiting from the chaos, fans the flames, blaming political opponents or foreign adversaries. The narrative is set. Our current economic system is broken, volatile, and unable to protect us. A new, more resilient system is needed. And what is the pre-prepared cure for this engineered sickness? They will not call it what it is. They will give it a sanitized, marketable name. They will call it progress. They will call it stability. They will call it the Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. The World Economic Forum, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, the very think tanks we identified as the architects of the narrative are already spending billions promoting this concept. They will tell you it is about efficiency, about fighting crime, about financial inclusion for the unbanked. This is a lie wrapped in corporate jargon. Here is the truth. A CBDC is not a digital version of cash. It is the replacement of cash with a system of absolute control. Cash is anonymous. Cash is freedom. It cannot be remotely tracked, monitored, or, most importantly, turned off. A CBDC is the polar opposite. It is a programmable ledger, a direct line from the central bank into your digital wallet. Every single transaction you make is recorded. Every purchase, every donation, every transfer is logged on a permanent, unchangeable government database. Do you see the endgame now? It is a chain of dominoes, perfectly arranged. The war in the Middle East creates the energy crisis. The energy crisis creates the inflation and economic collapse. The collapse creates the public desperation. And the desperation creates the political will to usher in their Great Reset solution, a new financial architecture built on CBDCs and digital identity. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is their openly published plan. They write papers about the benefits of programmable money. What does that mean? It means your money could come with an expiration date to force you to spend it. It means your purchases could be restricted based on your carbon footprint score. If you buy too much gasoline or red meat, the transaction is simply declined. If you donate to a political cause they deem problematic, your access to your funds could be frozen, as we saw with the Canadian truckers. A CBDC is not a financial tool. It is a digital panopticon, a prison for your wealth, and ultimately for your dissent. This is the perfection of the model. The military-industrial complex creates the physical crisis. The global financial elite reaps the profits and facilitates the debt. And the supranational organizations use the resulting chaos to sell the public on a digital cage, all under the guise of safety and security. They are demolishing the old, messy house of individual liberty, not to rebuild it, but to construct a new, inescapable, smart prison where every inmate is tracked, traced, and controlled. Your tired arguments about Israel and Palestine are the background noise that allows them to get away with it. They want you consumed with flags and ancient grievances so you don't notice the bars of the new jail being erected around you. From a bombed-out street in Gaza to the QR code on your phone, it is all one contiguous battlefield. They are not simply winning a war over there. They are leveraging it to win a war against your sovereignty right here. You think they are finished? You think war is their only tool for generating the necessary fear for this reset? That is merely their loudest instrument. The next crisis is already being primed. It is more subtle, more pervasive, and arguably more powerful. It has to do not with the ground beneath your feet, but with the very air you breathe.